So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Muazam. I'm the web domain lead of Think Digital Club. I've been a part of the club for over a year now, and I'll be the host for today's meeting. Okay. So today we'll be learning about some basics of web development and what are we are going to learn in the weekly productive sessions. Okay. So today's agenda will be basically talking about what web development basically is and the roadmap to becoming a web developer. Also, we'll learn about why we should learn web development and what we're going to teach you. Okay. First, let's talk about what web development basically is. Okay. So, web development basically is the building and maintenance of websites. As the name suggests, web development. Okay. So, we're basically building, maintaining, and developing websites. It's basically the work that happens behind the scenes to make the website look great. Okay. So, for example, you have this Google Meet, it is also a website. We have so many websites available in the market. Okay. So, the way in which we basically develop these websites, make them work fast and perform well with a seamless user experience, that is called web development. So now who does this web development? Okay, so the ones who do this web development are called web developers or devs. Okay, web devs. So they do this by using different variety of coding languages. The languages they use depend on the types of tasks they are performing, whether it is front end, back end, full stack, etc. Okay. Uh, so web development skills are in high demand worldwide. Okay, and they are well paid too. So you don't need to worry about that. When you learn web development, you will get a highly paid jobs as well. This makes development a great career option. Okay, so you can pursue web development as your career. It is also one of the easiest and accessible higher paid fields, as you don't have to need basically a traditional university degree to become qualified. Okay, so if you are fully aware of these web development basics to advanced, you can get a job without a degree. Okay. Alternatively, we can define web development as the coding or programming that enables website functionality per the owner's requirement. Okay, it mainly deals with the non-design aspect of building websites, which includes coding and writing markups. We'll be talking about all this in the next few sessions that we'll be conducting. Also, it ranges from creating plain text. Okay, so for example, I create a plain text field that is also on my website. That is the most simplest thing that you can do using web development, and it can be as advanced as social media net applications like Instagram, Facebook, GitHub, LinkedIn, etc. Okay, so the hierarchy is as follows. First, we have the client side coding. Next, we have the server side coding, and then we have the database technology. Okay, so most web devs basically use HTML. Can anyone tell me the full form of HTML?
Hypertext markup language.
Yeah, exactly. So hypertext markup language, uh, that is the most widely used language for writing web pages. And next is the CSS. Can anyone tell the full form of that?
Cascading style
Cascading style
sheets.
sheets.
Yeah. So basically, HTML is used to create the structure, and CSS is used to style that structure. Okay. And we also can use JavaScript to develop websites. So just a brief introduction about all these things that we'll be using. First, I'll go with HTML. Okay, so HTML basically defines the basic framework of the website, the foundation upon which everything else is built upon. Okay, so we create elements. For example, on this Google Meet, you can see that there are so many boxes, right, for each and every participant. So these boxes are basically created in HTML and then they are styled in CSS. Okay. Although it is theoretically possible to code a website on HTML only, but it is the just a bare bone site, okay, with no functions unless it is enriched with CSS and JavaScript. Now, in order to add styling to your HTML, you'll have to use CSS, and in order to add functionality, like for example, I click on something, I should be a drop down should show up, an alert message should show up, or anything. I mean, I should be redirected to a particular page. I should get data from the database. So for that, we will use JavaScript. Also, even a simple style modification such as changing the color of a button require a lot of coding to be executed using HTML only. Okay, but then CSS comes into play. So CSS is used to style the content of a website, as I've already mentioned, and uh, this way, whenever a change must be applied to say consistently change the color of all the buttons, for example, we'll only have to write a few lines of code in the CSS and it will apply on all these elements. Okay, we'll talk about it when we get to the coding part of the sessions. And also talking about JavaScript. So JavaScript is a programming language. It is used to take care of the interactivity of many unique elements. Okay, it can be used to create effects that alter the appearance of icons or drop-down menus or add animations, games, or other interactive elements. Okay. Now, coming to the thing that the field of web development is generally broken down into front end, that is the user-facing side, and the back end, that is the server side. Okay. Can anyone tell me the difference between front end and back end development?
Front end web development is which we view on our screen.
Okay. So see, a front end developer basically takes care of the layout, design, and interactivity using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. They take an idea from the drawing board and turn it into reality. Okay. So for example, I have a layout. I have drawn it using pen and paper. Now I have to convert that layout into a web page. So basically, the front end developer handles that. So basically, what we see and what we use, such as the visual aspect of the website, the drop-down menus, the text, all are brought together by the front-end developer, who writes a series of programs to bind and structure the elements, making them look good and add interactivity. Okay. Now, what is a back-end developer? So the back-end developer basically is the one who is going to work on behind the scenes, right? We're not able to basically see what a web developer is doing, but it happens at the backend. Okay, so this is where the data is stored, and without this data there would be no front end basically. Okay, so for example, if you go to Instagram, if there's no backend, you'll not be able to upload posts, see posts, or text other users. It basically requires backend to handle all that. Okay, so backend of the web consists of the server that hosts the website, an application for running it, and a database that contains the user data. A website can only be front end only. Okay, so for example, the portfolios of different users, that is only a front end project. You don't need to fetch data from the backend or database because the data is really limited. Okay, but considering, for example, an e-commerce websites, you cannot have that much data in your front end. You'll have to create a database or a backend to fetch all that data from the backend. Okay, now the backend developers uses the computer programs to ensure that the server, the application, and the database run smoothly together. Okay, so this type of developer needs to analyze what the company's needs are and provide efficient programming solutions to that. Okay, and some examples of the backend languages are PHP, Ruby, Python, Node.js, Java, etc. Okay, now coming to the I've used the set notation to represent these. So this is the front end, this is the back end, and this is the database. Okay, now if both front end and back end development appeal to you, you should consider becoming a full stack developer. That is an intersection of all these sets. Okay, so full stack developers take care of both the front end and back end and need to know how the web works on all levels. Okay, in order to determine how the client and server sides will relate. Naturally, working upon this level to expertise will take longer as there is more to learn. Now we'll talk about the roadmap of becoming the web developer. Okay, so basically we'll have to start with the basics. Of course, you cannot directly jump onto backend development, for example, to advanced JavaScript directly. You'll have to learn the basics. So your basics are going to include HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And in JavaScript, you can learn a simple framework that, for example, jQuery. Okay, then getting deeper, you can switch to CSS. Advanced CSS, I mean, you can choose a framework. Some example frameworks are Bootstrap, Materialize CSS, Semantic UI. Then you can learn some preprocessors, okay, that will add some programming functionalities to your CSS, such as Sass, Less, Stylus, Post CSS. Also, you can learn about responsive websites, okay. Next thing you can do is you can jump to JavaScript. You can learn the ES6 functionalities. You can learn TypeScript. You can learn a lot more, for example, npm scripts, gulp, grunt, and you can also learn about node package manager. Then later on you can basically switch to Angular, React. Those are just JavaScript frameworks that make things easier for you. Angular, React, Vue, Ember, etc. Okay, After that, what you can do is you can switch to backend development. You need to learn Node.js. Node.js is basically JavaScript only. Okay, so you can handle both front end and backend using the JavaScript language only. So as you can see here, it is mentioned that in as of 2018, 69.8% of the software developers use JavaScript, and 57% use the SQL as their database. Okay, so why JavaScript is that famous is because you can write both front end and back end using the same language. You basically need to learn this language, and you can handle both the client as well as the server side of the program, okay, or the application. Now, here are some of the reasons why you should learn web development. So maybe you have your reservations about the starting a career in web development, or maybe it's a trade that you haven't thought about yet. Either way, I've just gathered some basic or some of the many reasons that are there to learn web development. So the first one is, for example, now hiring. There are web dev jobs available. Given that there are approximately 1.4 million computing jobs available in 2020, with only 400,000 qualified developers to fill them. Okay, so those interested in acquiring in-demand skills can certainly benefit from having web development and coding in their resume. It is safe to say that there is and will continue to be high demand for web developers because you imagine starting a company. For what do you think is when you start a company, is the app the very first thing that you do when you start a company, or is it a website? I'd just like to hear some suggestions from you guys. For example, you're starting a company. Would you rather hire an app developer to create your app, or will you first, basically, for your company, create a website and hire a web developer? Can I get any answers for that?
A website will be good for initializing.
Yeah, exactly. So you won't have to worry about finding jobs for web developers anytime soon. Okay. Now, next factor that I've included is a great income. So, according to US News and World Report, certified professional web developers earn an average of $64,000 nationwide. Okay, salary shouldn't be the only factor when deciding whether or not to learn web development, but it should be taken into consideration. Now, with the average household income in United States being $56,000 only, average income web developers looks pretty nice. Okay, that is 64 to $65,000. The next thing that I've included is no wasted time in learning how to code. Okay, so if you're serious about learning how to code, there are several options for web dev education. You can do a CS degree, teach yourself online, or do a boot camp. All are great options. It really depends on how quickly you want to get into the workforce. Okay. Now the benefit of boot camp is that you can know how to code and use that knowledge as well in 13 weeks. Boot camp is usually about 13 weeks. It's an intense 13 weeks, but you will have people dedicated to your success in learning and finding a job throughout your bootcamp experience. Okay. The next thing, you can work from anywhere. You can have freedom to work whenever you want from wherever. Imagine that. All you need for web development is the internet and a laptop. Not all jobs are remote, but that is up to your preference, and there are remote jobs out there for you as well. Okay. Next is the tech is where sorry, I mean, you can work from just lost the point. You can work at an awesome tech company. Okay, so there are companies that hire web developers as well. I mean, MNCs, multiple MNCs also. So because there is such a high demand of these web developers and so little trained developers to fill those positions, tech companies are doing an excellent job at making work like very comfortable. Okay, if not enjoyable. If you choose to work for a tech company as a web developer, you will enjoy free food, ping pong, and rad co-workers. Okay. Now, coming to the second last point, there's always a freelance opportunities. I mean, if you, for example, start learning web development from now, after a few months, you'll get familiar with all these languages that I talked about in the roadmap. You can go to many websites like Fiverr, Upwork. There are many websites available there. You can always have the freelance opportunities there. Okay, so if you're the type that likes to work project to project on your own terms, then being a freelance web developer is exactly what you need. Okay, once you join the web dev community, you will find that there are plenty, like literally a lot of opportunities for you to freelance. Okay, coming right after, for example, if I go to Fiverr, you can note this down maybe, the fiverr.com. you'll see that there are so many opportunities for you guys. You're literally getting paid to do the task that the people have posted there. Okay. Now, coming to the last part, that it is creative and fun. Okay, web development gives you the opportunity to express yourself, discover your creativity. If you have an idea you'd like to try as you discover your web dev skills, okay, try it out. Web dev is fun, create, and it is a creative experience as well. Okay, so deciding a career will always be a difficult decision, especially when you are unsure of what the outcome will be after you have invested your time and money into the learning trade. Okay, so fortunately, the high demand, easy to learn, fun to experience life of a web developer is always a great choice for someone ready to have an exciting career in code. Okay. Any doubts till now? Like, am I are my points clear? Like, why you should be learning web development?
No doubt, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
Okay. Now, what Think Digital will basically teach you is today I'll be showing you how to install some basic text editors. Like, text editors are required to code, right? You'll have to write the code somewhere, write the HTML, write the CSS, or write the JavaScript somewhere, save it and check your browser. So we'll be installing some text editors, the browsers which I'm sure you guys will already have. And later on, we'll be showing you how to install the version control system, the Git or the GitHub, and other tools. Okay. Also, we'll be teaching you HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then we'll show you how basically you'll showcase your work to the recruiters or the other people. Okay. So it shouldn't be like that you'll create a website out of something and then you'll not be able to showcase it to others. So for that, we'll use some hosting services. We'll be using GitHub to host your projects, and then you can show them off to your friends and other loved ones. Now, what we're going to do in this weekly productive session is that we'll be making the clone of Spotify. Okay, so I'm sure everyone has used Spotify. Am I right? Everyone has used this.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So we'll be making the clone. We'll try to replicate this website. That is the homepage of their website. We'll be creating separate components. I mean, we'll go component by component. First, we'll, for example, create the top section, then the left section, then the bottom section. We'll create these cards for each and every song. Okay. Yeah. So let's get started with. First of all, let's download a code editor. So what I want you guys to do is you guys should search for Visual Studio Code. So alternatively, you can search for VS Code and go to this download link. Don't worry, I'll put the link in the chat box as well. So I'll put the link in the chat box. You can download the Windows version if you're on Windows, or if you have a Mac or Linux, you can download these versions. Okay. So I'll not download it again because I already have it installed on my setup. And okay, I'll wait for you guys. I think you can do it in a few minutes as well. So if anyone already has a text editor, he can put a yes in the chat box. Else, all those who are downloading it and have the setup ready to install, they can put a yes in the chat box. Okay, great. So you guys already have, right? Okay. So I'll open a new window, okay, of VS Code. So it basically looks like this. I'll go through what and how we are going to use Visual Studio Code as our text editor. So here you can see this palette, right? This is basically the explore option. So you can basically explore your files here. First thing you can do is you can click on open folder and then create a new folder or an existing folder, whatever is okay with you guys. So what I'll do is I'll go here, I'll create a new folder. I'll name it as WPS. Okay. I'll do select folder. So what it does is it will actually open that folder. You can see the folder name here. I'll increase the font so that it is visible to you guys. So I have this WPS folder open here. Now the first things first. Now what we are going to do is, for example, I'm going to start with HTML today. Okay. Now, what you can do is, you can use any code editor, but I'll be using Visual Studio Code. So first things first, I'll go through the extensions tab. So here you can see the extensions tab. You can install some of the basic extensions that are needed to make your VS Code look better. You can install the themes. You can search for theme, and you'll get a lot of themes here. You can install any one of them. You might be feeling like my VS Code looks a bit different than yours. That is because I've installed a theme. Also, I want everyone to install Live Server, both on Sublime Text, Atom, or whichever code editor you guys are using. So I want you to search for Live Server and open the first link, and I want you guys to install it. Once it is done, you can put a yes in the chat box. Okay, I'm sure everyone will have installed this thing. Now, just give me a minute. So as I've already mentioned, that HTML5 basically stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Uh, any quick definitions for this thing? What HTML actually is?
Structure of a web page, sir.
Basic framework of a web page.
Okay. See, I'll give a brief definition of what HTML is. So it is basically the code that is used to structure a web page and its content. Okay. For example, content could be structured within a set of paragraphs, a list of bulleted points, or using images and tables. Okay. So next question for you guys is do you think HTML is a programming language?
No, sir. It
No.
is a markup language.
Okay. So any answers for what a markup language actually is?
It has no logic.
See, you're right that it is a markup language. So HTML basically is not a programming language. So you cannot say that I know a programming language if you know HTML. It is a markup language. So what a markup language is it uses tags to define elements within a document. Okay, it consists of series of elements which can enclose or wrap different parts of the content to make it appear in a certain way or act in a certain way. Okay. So yeah, the points that I've already mentioned, you can have a quick go through, or you can quickly go through all these points. Now let's talk about the structure of our HTML document. Okay, so our HTML document basically consists of all these things. I'll be showing you guys in the code editor as well, but simply a simple HTML document where I've mentioned all these tags. So I'll just go through. For example, this is a heading tag. Okay, so a heading tag has 6 different types. Okay, it goes from H1 to H6 depending upon the size. H1 is the largest heading tag that is available in HTML, and H6 is the smallest one. Okay, so basically when you declare an H1 tag, it is a bit different from a normal text. That is, it is a bit bolder, it has space around it, and it is having a font size depending upon the tag that you've used. Similarly, if you want to create a simple paragraph tag, you can use this P tag here. And for example, you have to create a link, you can use the anchor tag here. Okay, don't worry, I'll go through all these tags in a few minutes. So for example, if I save this document and I go to my browser and open it, you can see that we'll be seeing a large heading tag because we have used the H1, so it will be the largest available on the document. Next is the smaller heading tag. So this is for the H2. Okay, so if I open H3 tag, it will be a bit smaller than H1 and a bit larger than, for example, H4 and H5 and H6. And this is the example of a paragraph tag, and this is an anchor tag. So for example, if I click on this anchor tag, whatever I put inside of this attribute, it will redirect me to that link. So if I click on this anchor tag, it will redirect me to, for example, abcd.com in our case. That will obviously change according to your use case. Okay, now first things, we'll create a basic HTML document. So how you can create an HTML document here is you can simply right click on this side and go to new file. That will create a new file, or alternatively you can go to this icon that is here. This is for creating a new file, this is for creating a new folder, and we can ignore these. I'll get to what these basically do. Okay, so what you can do is you can create a new file and name it as index.html. So just note this down, that your website's entry point should have the name index.html. So basically, when I create a website, so we're creating a Spotify clone, we're creating an Instagram clone, we're creating any other website. When you put that website on a hosting service, for example, GitHub or Heroku or GoDaddy, anywhere, and when you go to that URL or the domain that you bought or the domain that the hosting service provides, the first thing it will do is it will look for this index file. Okay, it will look for your index file. You don't need to mention this in your address. You can simply go to the hosting service, you can open the URL, and if it does not find the index file, it will show an error, because then you'll have to provide a proper address to your website. Okay, sorry for that. So for example, my website goes like www.thinkdigital.com. I've hosted it somewhere on the hosting service, and if I have an index.html file, I don't need to mention any subdomain address. Okay, it will directly open this index file. But if I have something like td.html, then I'll have to mention, for example, /td.html. Okay, so in case of the index file, you'll not have to mention that. So your landing page or the page that should be loaded when your website is opened should always have index.html as their name. Okay, so .html is the extension used for saving the HTML files. So the latest version of HTML that is available is HTML5. So before using HTML5, you'll have to tell your document that you're using HTML5. So I'll create a tag and I'll write like this: !doc type HTML. What this basically does is it will tell your document that we are going to use HTML5 as our language. Okay, I'll erase that. I'll show you a shortcut to get the boilerplate HTML code in your text editor. In VS Code, Emmet is there by default. You don't need to install any extension to use Emmet abbreviations. But I guess for Sublime Text or any other editors, I don't know about that. You can put your doubts in the chat box and you'll get your answer there. Okay. So for the VS Code users, what you can do is you can simply write ! and wait for this drop down to pop up. Okay. So if you click on the first ! you'll get this boilerplate HTML code. You can see here, it is the Emmet abbreviation. And if you go to the second one, you'll just get the thing that I just showed that tells your browser that you are using HTML5. Okay. Now I'd obviously want a boilerplate code, so I'll press enter. And now I have my boilerplate code. So again, I'll explain this thing. What it does is it will tell your browser that we are going to use HTML5. Okay. Now the next thing is the HTML tag. So this is the, I'll remove this thing for now. This basically tells that the language we're going to use is English. I'll remove it for now. And this is the opening tag. This is called the opening tag, and this is called the closing tag. So there are some tags available in HTML which do not require a closing tag. Okay. So for example, this meta tag, I'll get to what this meta tag actually does, but this meta tag does not require a closing meta tag. Okay. So, but this head tag requires a closing head tag, and this body tag also requires a closing body tag. So coming back to this HTML tag, so this represents the root of an HTML document and is the container for all the other HTML elements. So everything that you have to write should go inside of these tags. Next comes the head tag. So head tag is the container for metadata. Now the question will arise, what is metadata? Okay, so metadata is the data about the HTML document, like the document title, the character set that we're going to use, styles, scripts, and other meta information like description and all. So metadata is not visible on our website. Okay, so coming to the first meta tag that is in the boilerplate code, this meta tag basically specifies the character set for the HTML document, and UTF-8 covers almost all the characters and symbols in the word. Okay. Next, you can skip this for now. We'll get to this one later. This is basically for Internet Explorer. We have to tell it how to render the document. Okay, so you can ignore that for now. We don't need it because I'm sure none of you will be using Internet Explorer as their primary browser. Now the next thing is the viewport meta tag. Okay, so the viewport is the so first question will be, what is a viewport, right? So viewport is the user's visible area of a web page. Okay, so this gives the browser instructions of how to control the page's dimensions and scaling. Am I clear? This will tell how to control the page dimensions and width or scaling, etc. Right? Uh, the width equal to device width basically sets the width of the page to follow the screen width of the device, which will vary depending upon the device, be it a monitor, a laptop, a mobile phone, a tablet. Okay. And the initial scale equal to one part sets the initial zoom level of the page when it is first loaded. Okay, so initially, obviously, I don't want my page to be zoomed in by default. It should have an initial scale of 1.0. Okay. Next is the title tag. This basically sets the title of your page, and I'll show you how and where this title tag is shown on our website. And then is the body tag. Basically, the body tag contains all the content, the actual content that has to be shown on our website and to our web users that will visit our website. Okay, that goes inside of this body tag. Now I want you guys to do this thing. What you can do is you can go here, right click on this, and click on copy path. I'll click on copy path and I'll go back to my browser and I'll paste that thing here. As you can see, we have a blank document because we haven't actually written anything. Okay.
So,
Is it clear
Yes.
for everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now, can anyone tell me where I'm seeing that title that I just talked about?
On the server.
Sir, on the tab.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God.
So this thing is called the title of your document. Now I'll simply change this title and I'll name it as, for example, WPS. I'll save this thing. I'll go back to my browser. I'll refresh the page, and now I'll be able to see WPS. Now, why I made you guys install live server is I made a change in my HTML document, right? And I had to come back to the browser and manually refresh the page. But will be, switching from browser to text editor almost 1,000 times when we're building complex projects. So I don't want to refresh. I don't want to press the F5 key 1,000 times. So there comes this extension, which basically I'll right click on my document and I'll go with open with live server. Now you can see that it is loaded here. Now, if for example I change this from WPS to Think Digital and I'll save it. Now you can see I didn't manually refresh the page. It automatically got refreshed by itself. And wait, I'll just show you another difference. For example, if I include some exclamation marks here, now you can see that this page is loaded using the address of that HTML document, and this is loaded using the live server. So as you can see, the changes appeared in this live server tab, but it didn't appear here unless and until I refresh the page. So if I refresh the page, now I can see the changes. So that is the advantage of using live server, although it is not necessary that you should be having live server to start web development. You can have it. It is just an optional thing. Okay. Now let's get started with some basic HTML tags that are available. You don't need to follow along. These are just basic HTML tags. Okay. So getting started with the heading tags. So for example, you have a heading on your website. For example, if I go to a website that has the name of Think Digital, so Think Digital should be highlighted a bit more than the rest of the content because it is the name of my company, my club, my organization, anything. Okay. So for that we have the heading tags. So we have 6 heading tags that as I've already mentioned. So you can see if you write H, and you can see all these tags that are available. So for example, I click on H1, it will automatically give me a starting as well as a closing tag. Okay. Now inside of it, if I write heading 1, I save it, I go back to my browser and I see a heading 1. This will basically differentiate from the normal text. I'll write normal text. I'll save it. You can see the normal text neither has a bold font and it does not have the font size equal to this heading tag. So I'll remove it for now. That is about the heading level 1 element. Okay. Now I'll show you a few more. For example, I'll have heading 3. Also, I'll create image 6 for heading level 6. Okay. It will. The only difference between all these is that it will change its size, its font size. Okay. Now, then I talked about the paragraph tag. So paragraph tag basically is enclosed within the p tag. Okay, so you just write p and press enter. Now, in case your text editor doesn't show this, you can write manually. I mean, you can just write the starting tag and the closing tag after that. Basically, VS Code will automatically close it, but in case it doesn't, you can obviously write it. Now, if you want, for example, a random text, I mean, you just want to fill out something to test your CSS or your responsiveness or anything, what you can do is in VS Code, you can write lorem, and after that, you can enter any random number. So I'll enter 10 and I'll press enter. So now I'll get 10 random characters. Okay, so I'll save it. Now you can see this is my paragraph tag. I can also write lorem 100. Now I will get 100 alphabets. Okay, but I'll stick with 10 only. Yeah, that's okay. Now, what this paragraph tag basically does is it defines a paragraph, and browser automatically adds a single blank line before and after each p tag. Okay, so for example, I have a text here, hello. So you can see hello, and after that I have a p tag, right? So p tag, instead of showing up here, it will show in the next line. And if I write anything after this p tag, like bye, it will not be shown here, else it will be shown in the next line. That is basically what a paragraph tag does. Now, next tag that will be trying out is the anchor tag. Okay, so for anchor tag, you'll have to simply write a and press enter. You'll get this attribute of href, and basically in this you'll write the reference of the website that you want to get redirected to. So how you write it is https, for example, / www.google.com. Now you cannot leave it like this, right? You will have to tell the user that you have to click on a particular thing to be redirected to the website. So I'll just write click here to redirect to Google. I'll save it and I'll be able to see a link, and if I click on it, it will redirect me to www.google.com. Okay, now for example, what if you wanted to redirect to a new page but not on the same tab but on a different tab, right? So how we'll do that is I'll add a new attribute of target equal to underscore blank. Now if I click on this link, it will open a new tab automatically and redirect me to the URL that we have mentioned here. Okay, any doubts till now?
No doubt.
Okay,
No doubts.
now let's use an image tag. So how we're going to use an image tag is we can simply use img and press enter. We'll get two attributes here. First is the source, that is you'll have to enter the source of your image, and next is the alternate text. Okay, so if I enter a random source, for example abc.png, and in the alternate text if I write, for example, random image, so if this image was not found in your folder or anywhere, if you entered a global URL, it will show this alternate text instead of that image. But for example, I'll go to this website, random image lorem pixum. I'll copy this URL. I'll write it here. Now this will automatically generate a new image every time we reload the page. Okay. Now you can see the image is actually available. That's why this random image is not shown. But if this image is not available, then we'll get to see this alternate text. Okay. Now you must be thinking that why this image didn't come in a new line, right? Any answers for why this image didn't come in a new line? No answers for that?
There are two kinds of text, which block text or
Inline
another
text, yeah.
inline text. Yeah.
We'll not use the word text because basically this is an image, right? So there's a term for that. We can say that there are two types of elements in HTML. First is the block level element, another one is the inline element. So examples of block level element are this heading tag, right? This is a block level element because if you write anything after this, you'll get to see that in a new line. And if there's anything written before it, you'll also get to see that in a new line. Okay, so heading tags are all block level elements. A paragraph tag is a block level element, but an anchor tag is an inline element, and a paragraph tag is also an inline element. Now there are for example, if I write a br tag here, now br tag will basically create a line break. It will basically
Excuse
break
me.
the line from here. Hello.
Yes, but can you zoom your VS Code a bit? Sound
Yes.
having trouble.
Sure. Is it visible now?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. So, okay, that is one way of creating a line break. You can use the br tag, or you can use any other block level element to wrap your image. Can you guys mute? There's some background noise coming from your end. I guess it is Surinder.
No, I'm muted only.
Okay. There is some background noise coming. I don't know. Okay, I'll continue. So yeah, that was one way of creating a line break. I mean, coming from this line to this line actually. Now, another way is, for example, I'll remove this br tag. What I'll do is I'll wrap this image inside of a block level element. Now, obviously, you are not going to wrap the image inside of an h1 tag or a paragraph tag. That is not good, right? Because those tags are for text. But for an image, you can what you can use is you can use a div tag. Okay, so I'll write div and press enter. I'll have a div tag, and this div tag is basically a block level element. So again, it will create a line. It will be shown in a new line. Okay, as you can see, it is shown in a new line. There are many other block level elements such as section. Section will also be shown in a new line. There's another one like a side. It will also be shown in a new line. These are called semantic tags because this will basically tell you the name actually means something, right? For example, I have a header tag also. It will also be shown in a new line. I have a footer tag as well. So what we can do is, for example, we'll create a simple website that is, it will have a header. Inside of the header, it will have a nav bar. So I'll use the nav tag, okay? And inside of that nav bar, we'll have an unordered list. First thing we'll do is we'll have a logo, okay? So I'll use the same image tag, img 50. So here I have, for example, this is the company logo. This is my company logo, okay? This will be inside of the nav bar, and also I'll have some menu icons, okay? So we can either create an unordered list or we can use an alternate way to do that. First, I'll show you what an unordered list is. So to create an unordered list, you will have to use a tag called ul. So ul, as the name suggests, unordered list. U for unordered, L for list. Now inside of an unordered list, you can create the list items, that is li list items. Press enter, and you can create items like, for example, home. I will create another one like about, another for my services, for example, and another one for inside of that I'll create an a tag. For example, this is a link inside of my nav bar. Now if you don't want your a tag to redirect to any other page, you can simply put a hash in here and write, for example, log in or sign up. I'll save it. Now you can see I have my nav bar here and I have my all these elements here, okay? Now For example, I'll talk about some inline elements as well. I didn't show the example of any inline element. So can anyone tell me an example of an inline element other than the A tag or the image tag? Hello? Any other example? Okay, no issues. I'll talk about it. So
Span.
yeah, span.
Yeah.
So span tag is an example of the inline element, and you'll be using it for uh, creating a text. For example, if you want a text to be inline, or if you want to create anything using CSS, you can use the span tag. So I'll write hi. I'll write, for example, here. I'll go back to my browser. Now you can see that here will be shown in the same line. Also, some other heading tags, sorry, inline elements are, for example, I want my text to be bold. So for the previous versions of HTML, you can use simply the B tag. And in the HTML5, you have the new tag that is strong. Okay, so you can use strong about. Now, these are also inline elements. So because they are wrapped in li, that is list item tag, that is a block level element, so they are getting in a separate line. So but what this B tag and this strong tag does is it will make my font bolder. Okay, it will increase its font weight. There is another styling tag that is available in HTML, that is em, or I'll write services here, or alternatively you can use an I tag instead of M. That will make your font a bit italic. Okay, I'll use the M tag because it is the latest convention that is used. Also, we have other tags, like I'll talk about a few more. First is the superscript tag. Okay, so SUP, I'll write 2 inside of it. So you can see that it will be shown a bit above, and it will have a font size less than the normal font size. Okay, so if you want to create a mathematical equation on your website, you can do that using SUP. And if you want to, for example, write a chemical formula, for that you'll need a subscript, right? So you can write SUB for subscript and write, for example, 10. Now I'll get a 10 below this about text because it is a subscript and this one is a superscript. Okay, any doubts till now?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, basically, if
Sir?
you, sure, yeah.
So what is nav tag, sir?
See, it doesn't actually do anything. For naming purpose, we have created a new tag. HTML has provided a new tag that is nav. So inside of nav, as the name suggests, what is going to be inside a nav tag? Can you guess what is going to be inside the nav tag?
Home.
A navigation bar, right? Like a navigation bar, right? It is just to, I mean, we could have used a div as well. It will, you'll see no changes here. It is similar to what we had before that, right? But in order to tell the users that are going through your code that what this tag basically does is what this tag actually stores, you have to use some semantic tag. It's optional, but uh, uh, if you follow the convention, you'll have to use these. So I'll talk about it. So did you get my point? Why we're using the nav tag? Just to tell the users that this will have the nav bar header. For example, if I consider this much portion from here to here as my header, so inside of the header tag, I can write everything that has to be shown when my website loads. Next thing, for example, I have a footer. Now, if I go to any random website like this, they'll have a footer, right? Now, I can enclose this footer inside of a div tag as well, but following the convention and using a semantic tag, I can use the footer tag. Okay, now inside of the footer, I'll write, for example, and copy. This will show a copyright symbol there. Copyright, for example, think digital. Now you can see this is our footer. Now actually you'll be thinking that footer should be at the bottom of our page, but yeah, that is where the CSS comes into play. Okay, so we'll start CSS thoda sa today. Okay, now as you guys have already told me that CSS is cascading style sheets. It is actually the first technology you should start with after learning HTML. So while HTML is used to define the structure, as I've already mentioned in the start of this session, HTML is used to define the structure and semantics of your content, but CSS is the one who is which is used to style it and lay it out. Okay, so for example, you can use CSS to alter the font, color, size, and spacing of your content, split it into multiple columns or rows, or add animations or other decorative features. Okay, now CSS is basically of three types. There are three ways in which you can write CSS. Not types, these are not types of CSS, but these are the ways in which you can write CSS. So first is the inline CSS, internal is the second one, and third one is the external CSS. Don't worry, I'll go through all three of them. Now, just a quick definition that inline CSS basically is written within the HTML tag itself. Internal is written in the head section of the HTML document, and external, as the name suggests, is an external CSS file that we create to style our elements. Okay. Now, a very basic CSS property I've shown here. So how you actually write the CSS is, first you write the selector. Now I have a heading tag on my page and I want its color to be blue and its font size to be 12 pixels. How am I going to do that is, I'll first write the selector, that is h1 in our case, then a curly brackets, a set of curly brackets. Okay, so the opening one and the closing one, and inside of that, first thing I'll write is the property name. So my property name is color, and then a colon, and then the property value, that is blue. And I can write infinite number of properties, and I just need to separate each property by a semicolon. Okay, now an example of inline CSS is this thing. For example, I have my p tag here, and in order to use the inline CSS, we can write the style attribute, and inside of that, style the element. I'll show it in the VS Code as well, so you don't need to worry. And this is the example of inline CSS. Okay, now I'll go back to my VS Code. Now what I want to do is, I want my what can we do? I want my this text to look red. Okay, the whole thing should look red. So how I can do that? Inside of the footer tag, before this greater than symbol, you can write a new property, style. You can either write it completely by yourself, or you can use the Emmet abbreviation. You can press enter. Now you will get style equal to and a pair of double quotes. Inside of that, the first thing we'll do is, I want my color of this text to be red, so I'll do color and I'll set it to red. Now if I go back to my browser, I can see that the color of this changed to red. Now what if I wanted to change, you can see the anchor tag is has a different color than the others, in order to tell the user, for the user experience purposes, that it is a link. Basically it is not a normal text. So for example, I want the color of this anchor tag to be green. So now we have used the inline CSS. Now the next thing we'll use is the internal CSS. So inside of my head tag, so this is my head tag, inside of that I'll create a new tag, that is style, and inside of this style I can use the CSS now. So I am going to style this anchor tag. So can anyone tell me what is the selector for the anchor tag?
A, sir.
A, yeah. So I'll write A, and then for example, I want the color of this to be green. Okay, so what I'll do is, I'll do color green, and I'll save it. Now if I go back to my browser, you can see the color of this anchor tag has turned to green. But now just have a look. For example, inside of this thing, I have a new section. Okay, and inside of this section, I have an anchor tag that says, that redirects me to nowhere, and it says, for example, click here to join Think Digital. Okay, now you can see that the color of this anchor tag is going to be green as well, because we have written A. So basically A will select all the anchor tags that are available in our HTML document. So if it's, no matter if it is here, if it is here, if it is after the footer, for example, I have an anchor tag after the footer. I'll write lorem ipsum. It will have the color of green. Okay, So that's a drawback. So how we're going to handle this situation is we're going to use the concept of classes and IDs. So the HTML ID attribute is used to specify a unique ID for an HTML element. What that means is, for example, I want to apply some CSS on this particular anchor tag. So I'll assign it an ID. Be sure that this ID has to be unique. So if I write an ID of, for example, login -link, be sure that you cannot reuse this ID. Okay, so IDs are unique. Now, what if I want to change the color of only this element? As you can see, I have added an ID. What I'll do is I'll copy this ID, and in order to style a particular element using its ID, what is the selector that we use for how do we select an ID basically? Can anyone answer that?
Hashtag.
Hash, yeah. So I'll write hash, I'll paste in my ID of that element, I'll save it, I'll go back to my browser. Now you can see only this anchor tag will turn green. Why? Because I assigned a unique ID to that, and I made it I selected it in the CSS using the hash selector, and after that I wrote the ID that I've entered here, and inside of that I wrote this thing. Okay, now another use case is I have, for example, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 anchor tags inside of my section. Okay, but what if I want to change the color of the first one and the last one to purple? What if? Just what if? So can anyone answer how I'm going to do that? So the first approach will be, for example, in your case, you will assign 2 different IDs to these, one ID here and one ID here, and then select them in the CSS and style. But that is not the best approach. What you can do is you can add a class. Okay, so class is somewhat similar to an ID, but the difference is that ID has to be unique and class does not have to be unique. Okay, so I'll add a class of click, anything, any name works. So I'll add a class of click here as well. Now can I get an answer with this? How do I select this class now in the CSS?
Dot.
So dot and the name of the class, that is click, then curly braces, to press enter. I want my color to be purple. I'll save it. I'll go back to my, okay, purple is actually not visible. Just a second. Okay, someone tried to join the meeting. Okay, purple is not visible, so I'll do orange. Now you can see the first and the, all the elements which have a class of click will turn orange. It doesn't necessarily have to be an anchor tag. So for example, I'll create a paragraph tag. So I'll create a paragraph tag with lorem 10, and I want if I add a class of click to here, click to this element as well, and go back to my browser. Now you can see the first anchor tag, the fourth anchor tag, and this paragraph tag will have a color of orange. Why? Because we didn't select the anchor tag with the class of click. What we did is we selected all the classes which have the all the elements which have the class of click. Now what if I wanted all the anchor tags, just note down, just hear it carefully. I want all the anchor tags that are on my website which have a class of click to turn orange. Any answers for how I will do that?
A.click.
Exactly, I'll do A.click. Now if I go back to my browser, you can see that only the anchor tags which had a class of click will turn orange. Okay, is it clear? Now similarly we can do it for ID as well, but we actually know that ID is actually unique, so you don't need to mention a hashtag ID, but yeah, you can do that as well. You can see it will not change anything. Okay. Now the next scenario is, for example, I will create another section here. Okay. Instead of section, I'll create an A side element. Okay. So I'll create some span tags here, maybe. Hello. Now you can see all these hellos here, right? So what I wanted to do is I have some span tags here as well. Without adding the class to these, I wanted all the span tags which are inside of this A side to turn pink. How am I going to do that? Any answers? See, I have these 4 span tags here. I have these 5 span tags here. Now, but I only wanted to change the color of the span tags which are inside of this A side element. Okay, did you get my question?
Yes, sir.
So any answers for how I'll do that?
Yes, sir.
A side span.
Yeah. So we'll use the parent-child concept in CSS. So just have a look at at this. This is the parent of these elements. Okay. This is a child of this section element. This is the child of this A side element. Similarly, this is the child of this link tag. This is the child of the UL tag as well. This is the child of the nav tag as well, and this is the child of the header tag as well. Okay, why? Because they are placed inside of the header tag, they are placed inside of the nav tag, or they are placed inside of the UL or the li tag as well. But this will get a bit complicated, so I'll go with this simpler example. So the parent for these span tags is section. Okay, its direct parent is a section, and for these hello tags, the direct parent is an A side element. Okay, now how am I going to select all these span tags which have their parent as A side? Is I'll simply write A side space span. Now this CSS will apply for all the span tags which have A side as their parent, be it direct or a sub parent. Okay, now what I'll do is I'll change the font size, maybe font size to 220 pixels. I'll go back to my browser. Now only the span tags which are inside of the A side will have a font size of 20 pixels. If it's not visible, I'll also change the font weight.
Sir?
Okay. Yeah, hello.
Sir, what is the purpose of span tag, sir?
See, I told you, for example, wait, I'll show an example, don't worry. Here I will create a new div tag. Okay, now I have a paragraph. I have something like an image here. I'll use the, okay, I'll just copy that from here. Okay, I have this image here. Okay, now for example, just for example, in this case, for example, I wanted to write something after it. So first thing that will come to your mind is the paragraph tag. Okay, but the paragraph tag will be shown in the next line, right? Now what if you wanted to show the text after this image, I mean in this area? How you're going to do that is you have to create an inline element. Now I gave examples of so many inline elements. Can you tell any one of them? Anyone, not span in particular, you can tell any inline tag. Anyone can answer this question.
B italics I.
Or strong. Okay, I'll use the strong word. I'll write this is an image. Now this will appear to the right of this image. Okay, so similarly you can use a span tag instead of strong. Now if you're wondering how my closing tag is changing whenever I'm changing the opening tag, you can go to the extensions tab and install auto rename tag, and the first link that appears here, you can install that and you'll have this feature. Okay, now you only have to change the opening tag and it will automatically change the closing tag. Okay, now also you can use the span, just like I said. Now you can see that text will appear to the in the same line as the image. Okay, is that okay? Whoever asked that question, is that okay?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, I'll talk about some very useful VS Code shortcuts or Emmet shortcuts. See, what I'll do is I'll go here. Now, what if I wanted to create a div or any tag with a class of, say, think digital, ऐसा कुछ, okay? So, if I want to create a footer with the class of box, anything, I mean, it's just the first thing that came to my mind. So I wanted to create a footer tag with the class of box. How am I going to do that is, I'll write footer dot box and I'll press enter. Now this will basically give me a footer which will have the class of a box. Okay, now you don't actually have to write the class equal to double quotes and then box. Okay, next thing, for example, I wanted to create my footer, but this time I wanted its ID to be a box. So any guesses for that, how I'm going to do that? I use the dot for a class. Now what am I going to use for ID? Just
Hash box.
hash, yeah. So hash box. This will give me a footer with the ID of a box. Okay. Now this was just the basic Emmet abbreviation. Next thing, let's go a bit advanced. Now, what if I wanted to create a footer, and inside of that footer, I wanted to create a paragraph tag. So I'll do footer. Then I'll put the greater than symbol and I'll write P. Okay. So what this basically will do is it will create a footer tag, and inside of the footer tag, so footer will be the parent of this P class. So inside of that footer, it will create a paragraph tag. Now also, for example, I wanted to create a footer. Inside of that, I want a span tag, and inside of the span tag, I want to write hello world. I'll press enter. This will actually give me a footer. Inside of the footer, there'll be a span tag, and if I have to write anything inside of the span tag, not an element, I've not written an element. For an element, you have to use the greater than symbol. But if you have to write any text inside of the inside of any tag, you'll write curly brackets, and then you can write hello world. Okay. So Kunal, can you put these basic CSS abbreviations in the chat box? Is it clear? Now let's have another complicated one. For example, I want my header tag. Inside of that, I should have a nav tag. Inside of the nav tag, I want a UL tag. Inside of the UL tag, I want 5 li tags. So I'll do header greater than symbol nav, this symbol UL, this, and then I'll do li star asterisk 5. Now I'll have a header tag. Inside of that, I'll have a nav tag. Inside of that, I have a UL tag, and I have 5 li tags as well. So as you can see, how much time we just saved by learning this shortcut, right? Now I'll show you another use case. For example, if I have, okay, I'll just do Control C. Now yeah, so now I want here you can see I have these 3 to 4 li tags, right? Now I want the class of this first li tag to be class 1, this to be class 2, and of this to be class 3. Now I'm not going to manually write these one by one, right? That will waste a lot of time. So what you can do is li star 5 will basically give me 5 li tags. Now what if I wanted to add just a single class to all those 5 li tags? So I'll just do dot li class, something like this. I'll press enter. Now I'll have 5 li tags with the class of li class because I actually wrote dot. Okay. Similarly for ID, but obviously I told you that we cannot have same IDs, right? We cannot have same IDs for 5 different elements. So that is not going to be our use case, but we can have different IDs for 5 different elements using dollar. Okay. So if I use dollar, this will actually automatically include the these numbers. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes.
I'll show it again if it is still not clear. Header, this will create a header tag. Nav will create a nav tag inside of the header. Then UL will create a UL, and li into 5 will create 5 li tags. Hash class will add an ID of class, and this dollar symbol will automatically write the number. Okay, so it will go from 1 to this number 5. Now, what if I wanted to create a div tag, and inside of that I wanted two separate tags? Okay, separate, not the parent child wala cheez, but a separate. I wanted a p tag, and I wanted a span tag, and I wanted an h1 tag. Okay, so you can write plus instead of greater than. You can write plus. That will give you 3 separate elements inside of your parent element. Okay, but if you want to go inside of those tags, then you'll have to use, for example, instead of plus, you'll write this symbol. Okay, now you'll have the parent, and then the subparent, then the subparent, and then the child. But if you wanted to go like this, then you can add a plus symbol. Okay, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Now we'll just simply create a basic external CSS file, and then we'll end the session. Okay, now what I want you to do is you can go to this icon and click on it, create a separate CSS file, style.css, press enter. Now you have a separate CSS file. Now for example, I will copy the CSS from here. I'll cut it and I'll paste it here. I'll save both the files. I'll go back to my browser. Okay, can you tell me why this is not working now?
There's no link between the documents.
Exactly. We have to add a link. We have to tell the HTML document that please refer to this file for your styling purpose. So how I'm going to do that is I'll write a link tag, link. It will have a rel attribute, which basically tells ki ye cheez kya hai. Okay, so this will tell it that we are referring to a style sheet, and inside of this href I'll write style.css. Now our changes will be visible. Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Sir,
Huh?
what is the usage of div tag, sir?
Div tag, I again told you na ki basically there is a lot of inline and block level elements. So in this case, what if you wanted to go into a separate line? See, but I can explain it like this. So here I have these hellos here, right? Now what if I wanted to write another hello, or I want, like, you don't have to think of this text only, right? You can think of, you have to create another box which should be below this hello tag. Okay, so instead of a span tag, you can write a div tag. Inside of div, if you write hello, it will be shown in a new line. Okay, here you can see it. Now let's create a box. Okay, let's just use CSS. So I'll add a class of box to this thing. Now how I'm going to select it here, dot box. Now if I have to create a box, so my box will basically have a height, a width, maybe a background color, maybe a border radius. Okay, there are so many CSS properties that we'll talk in depth when we start to build the clone, but I'll go through some basics. So first we have the width. If I add a width of 200 pixels, I'll add a height of 200 pixels, and let's add a background color of red. Okay, now you can see that I have a box. Its height and width will be same because we added the same value, so it is going to basically be a square, and it will have a background color of red because we actually added it. Okay, but what if I wanted its border to be of a different color? So I'll add a border. So this is a shorthand property for adding borders. So what you can do is first we'll add it separately. Okay, so border color, will be green, border width will be 5 pixels, and border style will be solid. Okay, now you can see we'll have a 5 pixel. Okay, I'll increase the size. I'll have a 15 pixel border. It will have a color of green, and it will have a type of solid. Some other types that CSS provider, for example, dashed. If I had a dashed border, it will be dashed as the name suggests. Also, there are so many properties which you can see here. Border style. I can have dotted, double, groove. So I'll show you dotted. This will be dotted, but the most commonly used one is solid. Okay. Now instead of writing these three properties in three separate lines, I'll just comment it out. What I can do is I can simply write border. Then I can add three properties to it. So first will be the size. So 2 pixels will be the size. Solid will be the style of the border, and color will be green. I'll add 15 here. So you can see no changes because we actually combined these three properties. So I'll I missed something. So there is something called comments. Okay. So what if you are working in an organization? So like we are a team. Okay. So like 11 people in this meeting are a team. We're working on creating a website, and we assign tasks. So for example, my task was to create this much, and any other of you will have to create the rest of the part, but you'll not actually know ki ye wala part kya hai, right? What this part is actually doing. So for that we'll use comments. So how you create comments are almost in every programming language, or in every language. They are there in the CSS as well. So in every language there is a separate way of writing a comment. So in HTML, how you can write a comment is you'll have these symbols, then you'll have exclamation mark, hyphen, hyphen, and two more hyphens and the closing symbol. Okay. Now between these, you can write anything. So I'll write hello, for example. Now this will not be shown on the browser because it is a comment. It is only for human eyes. Okay. Browser cannot actually see this thing. Okay. Browser cannot see this thing. It cannot render this thing because it is a comment. Okay. So for example, I'm working with a team. I'll tell them that this is the start of a section. I'll copy this line, and for example, here I'll say this is the end of the section. It will not be shown here, but when my teammate or my colleague will open this code, he'll know that this is the start of the section and this is the end. Now you'll be seeing that it is obviously visible that you can see the start of the section and the end of the section. But when you're building complex websites, the start of the section can be in line number 33 and the end of the section can be in line number 205. I mean, it can be so big. So that's why you can use the comments. They are not necessary, but it is a good practice to be using them. Okay. Now similarly, there's a shortcut to create a comment. So for example, if I write this is a start of the section. Now, if you have to write a comment, you can simply press Control and slash together. Okay, so Control slash, it will automatically create a comment. So that is what I did here. I can comment as well as uncomment these three lines using the Control slash. I'll press. You can see they are getting commented, uncommented, commented, uncommented. Okay. Okay, so that is how we select an element using its class. We can use the dot operator. Okay. So we can use dot box. I can add a height, width, and all of these things to it. Okay. So any questions other than for HTML? I mean, not necessarily regarding the HTML. Any other questions regarding the web development field or anything?
Sir, you will teach full stack development or front or back only?
For now, in the WPS, we'll only be teaching front-end development using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay. But later in the club, we'll be teaching the full stack development as well. From backend, from front end, from full stack. I mean, we'll be teaching everything.
Okay, sir.
Okay,
Sir,
sir.
what we have to learn for responsive web design, sir?
For responsive web design, you have to learn advanced CSS. Okay. It is done using CSS only, no doubt. You don't have to learn any other framework or anything to make a responsive website. but you'll have to learn concepts that are there in the CSS, like grid, flexbox. We'll teach that. I'll teach that. I mean, our Spotify clone will mostly be responsive because we're not using that much JavaScript inside of that. It will not be 100% responsive exactly like it is there in the Spotify original website, but it is going to be responsive, and I'll teach the concepts. Don't worry.